Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Wubble. I'm here to compete in the HackFS competition. This is my call out for team members. I'm looking for somebody with React.js skills or Python, Flask app skills, or any knowledge with Filecoin. I just want to give you a little bit about myself. I am self-taught and I've worked in Flask app and developing APIs between Flask app and Node.js and React. And essentially, I've been trying to develop a microservices open source platform for the healthcare industry for the last year. And I've been working with doctors and radiologists to develop a platform that really fits their needs. And I just want to share with you today what that problem is, why it's complicated, and essentially why I need your help developing. All right. So the problem is that healthcare imaging data is growing at a rapid pace, outpacing our capabilities to store all that data. This is a graph by Dell Technologies that explains that in 2020, a lot of this data is hitting into extra bytes. Sorry about that. I have speech impediments. Essentially, in the US, the government requires us to store healthcare data for 7+ years, and that includes imaging data. So the size of this data, the amount of it is really large, and it gets into the terabytes, and it pales into comparison to Facebook and Twitter's data size. But here, essentially, you can see that even single hospitals in the US can get into terabytes just via their imaging for CT scans, for parts of the body, trauma cases, things like that. So there's challenges to this problem, and essentially these three challenges are de-identifying data, sharing data between users, and data version control. And I'm going to explain the last problem the most because it's why I encountered for the last year working with radiologists or doctors. So when we upload CT images to Google Drive, unsurprisingly, doctors and radiologists use this tool to do research. The data has already been de-identified. I'm experienced as a data scientist and working with data scientists is that we look through the image to check that all the images are there. So this looks normal on what's known as a transverse plane. It's like going through somebody's body from the head to the top down, and everything looks good. That's a spine, somebody's liver, or their lung. What doesn't look good is when I look through the frontal plane or the coronal plane, and basically you can see that there's this stuttering in the pixelation of this image, and essentially what that is actually those are missing DICOM files. And what we wanted to see is something like this. We want to see their lungs here, right? But I want to talk about my solution. So OpenVessel, as an open source startup, essentially that I've been working on for years, that we plan to release microservices, containers that work as a React.js front end to handle, de-identifying healthcare data for the client user, things like that. And then that data is then posted to a Flask app API that exists as a container that can be backed up periodically in the cloud if it goes down or if there's issues, or we can diversify different containers with this functionality. And then that talks to a Postgres database for me. It's really just developing this pipeline of having a user uploading data to the app, sharing data between a doctor or a patient, or doctors and researchers, things like that. And since they use Google Drive a lot already, we want to include that integration. But this is where Filecoin comes in, and essentially developing a startup for these problems are really expensive, and Filecoin offers the scalability to researchers like myself, or if I'm working with somebody in the UK, or a lot of the time I work with people in India. Sometimes accessing data is a real issue for us. For this hackathon, I'm going to try to develop this technology. So I'm going to use Filecoin as a form of data version control, or DALT is another alternative that I've been looking into. I'm going to get into the platform. So since this is an open call, I just want to know what you'll be working with. Essentially, this is a drag and drop box feature on our Flask app where we can move the DICOM files and it uploads into the Postgres database, and or you can call the API to do the uploading through scripts or programmatically. Excuse me. Oh, and what happens is that after the upload is done, this displays a new card to the user. You know, there's 200 files in the CT scan, and this is what is being displayed as the study name, date, and etc. And this can also be put on API to call the browser to the specific user. So you say user API, I want to see all the data for this user. You know, this is just an example, as that a portion of that monthly cost to the user, or maybe an institution at a bulk price, a portion of that will go to the Filecoin network for scalability, because my goal is to build a pipeline for the healthcare system and its software developers to have a multiplier for medical data on the Filecoin network instead of just user data. If it's just user data, that is fine. But that is really the goal I'm trying to achieve with this hack and this feature development for other developers. So yeah, thank you for your time there. I'm looking for somebody with React.js skills, JavaScript, Python, or anything that can help me develop this idea into a better form-fitting API with documentation and really having a production-ready platform. You know, obviously these technologies need to be tested and robustly made for production, and I think this is a great opportunity to do that in this hackathon. So yeah, hit me up on Discord. Add me as a friend, and that's about it. Thank you.